the prisoner, trapped in a village from which there is no escape, where he is forced to join the dance of the dead. This is a nightmare world where even reality is a shifting, slippery shadow.
What you should do is find yourself a nice young lady for carnival. You're too independent. Now, they're pretty and unattached.
But her.
Quite unsuitable.
I'm independent. Don't forget.
Here, nothing and no one can be trusted.
Well, he's given me quite a lot of information, but he's reluctant to go any further. I'm afraid I'll have to be more extreme. Of course, I'll win in the end. I always do.
Why are they trying to kill me?
They don't know you're already dead. Locked up in the long box. In that little room.
Don't let The Prisoner escape you on this channel.
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. Information. Information.
I'm Scott Appel, your host for The Prisoner here on Channel 54. Tonight's episode, Dance of the Dead, introduces us to a few new aspects of life in the village. For instance, there's a new number 2 this week, an event which will reoccur almost weekly throughout the series. And here we learn more about the amount and degree of surveillance in the village. Electronic cameras mounted everywhere are not enough for this number 2, it seems. She wants a personal touch and has assigned individual observers to the more rebellious prisoners, and we can guess who's at the top of that list. Here, too, we learn more about the society of the village, such as it is. Later in the series, the prisoner refers to a group of the villagers as a bunch of tailor's dummies. Tonight we see them more as museum mannequins, whom number 2 dresses at will for the enforced gaiety of a dark carnival. But now it's time to watch our hero pay the piper, even though number 2 calls the tune for the Dance of the Dead.
Where am I?
In the village.
What do you want?
Information.
Whose side are you on?
That would be telling. We want information. Information.
You won't get it.
By hook or by crook, we will.
Who are you?
The new number 2.
Who is number 1?
You are number 6.
I am not a number. I am a free man.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of Once Upon a Village, a prisoner podcast. It's your number 2 here, John Estrew, and we're at that point in the series. It's about a third of the way through. There were only 17 episodes of this show, but we're on a very key one here because it's our only real, in the sense of that we know of, number 2 here acting through this episode being female. And as you know, myself and my partner here, who's been doing this since the very beginning, Mr. Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Hey, as the song says, I'm dancing as fast as I can.
But as we've discussed here, our prisoner has a certain way with women that sometimes can be looked at as a little more than charming.
That comes into play in this episode.
It does. It does.
There's actually quite a few women in this episode.
Yes. Yep.
More so than normal, and his interactions with them I will admit, are interesting, perhaps more interesting than the episode itself.
I will say, as you say, interesting, and I said that too, and as you pointed out before we started, we could have very different meanings for interesting, so we'll see as we go through this episode.
Yeah, I overheard something, and maybe I shouldn't have, because it sort of painted my outlook, although I had an outlook on this after I watched it, and then I saw online people talking about this particular episode, and somebody said that Patrick McGoohan, quote, hated this episode.
Ooh.
Unquote. Now, I didn't see the interview where he said that. I'm going to take it, at face value that might have been true that he said that wasn't just someone's interpretation. So I don't hate this episode, but I'm not terribly fond of it. To me, it's more or less plotless. It doesn't really do anything or say much of anything, and if it does, it just sort of covers ground that we've already covered. And I think a lot of that owes to the fact that this was an early episode filmed.
Right.
Number 4, if I see correctly. Yeah, it was number 4. And I think that's very apparent in a couple different ways. And I think maybe it hurts it to be placed where it was placed in the actual, what is it? Are we on number 8? Right?
We're on number 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the final episode before the British broadcast and the American broadcast go off the rails and do their own thing. Okay. Yeah.
You know what it is what we're getting in this episode, just speaking of it in general terms, is we're getting a lot of the basic fundamentals of the village, which we already kind of know. At one point, number 6 says, "I'm new here."
Yes.
So we know that this is early on. Again, we're getting this sort of building blocks thing, where the audience is being told certain things or just sort of laying the groundwork for how it is in the village. And we're, I feel like we're already well past all that stuff. I don't know. Well, let's go along through it, and maybe I'll complain more as we go along.
I wanted, because it's interesting. You said this is plotless, and maybe that's where my problem is. Because when I said interesting, I was like, I didn't know really how to feel about this walking away from it. That's
a good way to look at it. I mean, I'm kind of unhappy with it. Like I said, I don't hate it. I don't know if I could say I hate any episode, But yeah, you kind of walk away going, but I don't know, Like, it doesn't go anywhere. We're back to the whole thing about trying to get information from him. Mm-hmm. It does. It seems like it's regressed. And if I was the producers, I may have held this one too. I'm not so sure I wanted this early on, because it's kind of incoherent and without focus, and it kind of just meanders around. I was maybe 3/4 of the way through when I go, I have really no idea where this is going, but not in a good way. Like, what is exactly the story here?
Well, it's funny, because what I was going to say was that I felt as I was watching it that it was like there was too much going on. It was just way too busy. And I kept saying, where is the plot? Because and is that why it's so busy? Because there is no real plot here.
Yeah, well, no, that's true. And right, if you pared away a lot of that, you're going to have maybe just a bare bones kind of a plot. I think that people probably remember this one, because of the female number 2. Mm-hmm. Who, as it turns out, the part was actually written for actor Trevor Howard. And I guess due to illness, he couldn't do this episode.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so they brought in Mary Morris, who is very interesting, but she's not really doing anything that any other number 2 is doing. I think there's something interesting going on between her and the guy that we open up the episode with. whose number I forget.
Number 40.
Is it number 40? The older man
he's got his team of men working on the prisoner.
Yeah, right. I think there was something interesting in the dynamic between him and number 2, but that kind of just gets put to the side, and nothing is really done with it. But again, go ahead and start off with the quote unquote story.
Okay. Well, let's, as we mentioned, the episode's called Dance of the Dead, November 17th, 1967 for the UK showing, July 27th, 1968 for the US showing. And I just wanted to quickly point out two little trivia bits here. First of all, we mentioned Mary Morris, who's our number 2. Jim's going to love this. My Doctor Who connection for this week is Mary Morris. She appears in a 5th Doctor story that many fans love, Peter Davison's Kinda.
Are you ready, little box?
It's another male. The old red-faced one who shouts.
No matter. Continue.
You said that only a woman could understand, that it's dangerous for a man.
Do as I say.
Which is a very spiritual story, and some may argue maybe just as busy and have no plot either. It all depends on how you look at it. She plays a mystical woman in that story. The other bit of trivia that I found out, the music box theme, and I thought it sounded somewhat familiar, that you hear in this episode is actually a piece of stock music that was used in Dark Shadows.
Good morning.
Don't tell me that time travel is in it as well.
A woman is always impatient to wear a new dress. How do I look?
Different from the others. The maids come and they go.
We'll get along.
I'm sure you get along with everybody.
I've got a good mind to report you.
I'm new here.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yep.
Wow, I wonder if my wife ever knew that being a fan of both these shows, Dark Shadows and... okay, well, very interesting.
It was used to drive one of the characters crazy because it was a music box that was originally owned by Barnabas's love, Josette.
Oh, wait, I should know that. That's called Josette's music box.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. It's funny. I should know that, and I didn't even recognize that. Wow. Yeah. Oh, my wife is going to haunt me forever for not knowing that.
In fact, it actually appeared 6 months before Dance of the Dead aired.
Oh, okay. Wow. Very, very interesting. Right. I wonder how that happened, since Dark Shadows was an American production.
Well, it's just stock music. So it's, they probably didn't know, and they figured they would just use it, and off they went.
Yeah, well, very interesting. Well, what I'm surprised at is that even it being stock music, that it was transcontinental stock music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
Well, interesting.
So the story, as Jim started talking about there, our number 40, he's a scientist of some kind who has previously done interrogations, and without consulting number 2, in the middle of the night, he sends a team of men to go into the prisoner's home, and while he's unconscious, they place a device on his head, which, when activated, makes him think he's home, which I liked because we didn't get a perspective, a point of view of him thinking he was home. He's just laying there in bed with the device, taking a phone call from someone who we will later learn, I believe, is Dutton, who we're going to meet here, telling him that the committee is onto him. They're rounding everybody up, including, and this is, again, another nice little callback, the Colonel.
The Colonel, yeah, I made a note of that. That was really nice. See, to me, as this whole thing was playing out, all I did was sit there and go, we've done this. Mm-hmm. Again, if it had been shown as the 4th episode, maybe it wouldn't have seemed that way. But I say, why in the world would he ever drink anything, knowing that he gets drugged every time he drinks something in his home in the village? But this coming in the middle of the night and getting him up and either taking him somewhere while he's unconscious or doing something. And I say, we've done this all before. This whole thing is interesting in the sense that it's its own little kind of compartmentalized little story. Like, we're already in the middle of whatever the scheme that number 40 has.
Right.
And it's a good one. I'm sure he probably thought it was a good idea, but you can tell that this is earlier on, because I think if it really was going on after all of the events of the other 7 episodes, he wouldn't have bothered, knowing that this wasn't going to work. But yeah, I did really like the callback to the Colonel, and that it seemed like this little scheme might work, but our number 6 is obviously much stronger willed than that.
He's much stronger willed, and also the process is stopped as number 2 walks in, and of course, and again, as you say, we're seeing elements we've seen before. The whole thing of not damaging him, and the point of is his brain all right? Because it's not a matter of just subverting his brain, as number 2 says, and we've seen this too. We must win him over.
Yeah, must win him over, and then she says he has a future with us.
Yes.
It's a tantalizing little thing, but it doesn't make for the whole episode for me. But that is interesting that once they get what they want from him, they think that they can still use him. Right. I assume that this is what's going on in the village. Once they get what they want from people, then they cement their position in the village or in the organization, and that's what most of the people that we see are. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. He wakes up the next morning with no memory of this, and we get this quick exchange between number 2 and the prisoner via the television set, which I liked.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good verbal fencing. I don't have anything against it, but again, it's we've seen this time and time again with the number 2s. She other than her being female, again, there's nothing that's really she's not standing out from anything else that we've seen so far, in my opinion.
No, absolutely, I agree with you there. The maid, number 54, arrives with breakfast, and she's dressed in a fancy dress costume.
Yeah, I like her a lot.
See, I liked her, but then I kept asking myself, why do I like her? Because, and to a certain extent, she's hostile to him, and of course, he's rude to her.
Yeah, well, that's part of what I like about it. Number 1, I think she's very attractive.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, we don't get a whole lot of, in my opinion, very attractive women in this show, but she's very attractive. She seems very saucy in her attitude, and like you said, she's smart alecky to him, he's smart alecky back to her. It's a fun little back and forth that I think maybe I'd like to have seen more of.
Mm-hmm. And this is where we get that part where he tells her he's new. So,
yeah, I'm new here.
Yeah. Now, there's an interesting bit here with the black cat. There's a black cat that he kind of befriends, and she's not too keen on it, no pets or anything like that. And that's where he's going on about being new when she says, I'll report you and stuff. But I got to ask, is this the same black cat that we see in Many Happy Returns?
It's very interesting because Many Happy Returns was the 13th episode filmed. So yeah, I don't know. I can only assume it is. This is another bit that I like. I love the idea that number 6, who is cold to pretty much everybody he meets and knows, but he and the cat connect.
Yes.
That he seems like this is funny. We learn something about him. He's a cat person, and I think that's very fun. And yeah, I'd like to think it's the same cat. Now, why there would be a rule against having pets?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't get, and that I'll report you stuff. I would have been a lot harsher to her if I was him after all of that.
Right. We learned that the village is having a carnival, and again, the prisoner meets up. Now he meets up with number 2 in person, and I thought it was interesting. There's, again, a little bit more of the verbal fencing, and we get, again, the prisoner trying to figure out where everything stands because he asks her, is she British?
Yeah. John, I gotta sound like a broken record here again. This is a regression because of the weird order of the episodes. It comes off as even more of a regression because of the where it's placed. This is what he used to do in the earlier days, right? You know, this fishing is a good way of looking at it. I enjoy it and I like it, and I like it when he can shut people up with a simple question, "Are you English?" You know, and make them change the topic of conversation. But again, you know, by this point, it's we've seen this all. I gotta say something about number 2. And all the number 2s really kind of do this, and it's just one of these funny things about this show. Number 2 goes on and on and on about we do this here and we do that, and it's a tradition and blah, 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 blah. It makes it sound like she has always been there. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily as number 2. I'm not saying that, but they all do that. They all go on and on and on about these traditions and everything. But they're always the new number 2. Like, how is it that they do know about or act like, oh yeah, we do this all the time in the village. We've done it year after year after year after year. Well, where was she before she was the new number 2? You know, is it just that they are all debriefed and then they all act like they've been around in the village for a while? It's just another one of these funny little things. And if I was number 6, I would say that, like, I've never seen you before a week ago, and yet you act like you've been here all along.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, I guess that's some of the shortcuts, though, too, that we have to accept.
It is. It's a, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's like a trope, you know, it's a standard thing of this show, that this idea that more time has passed than probably really has. Mm-hmm. And you know what? This is part of the show, I guess. You're always on shaky ground. Nothing is confirmed. You don't really get an idea of one thing or another. And I guess that's on purpose.
Now, did you think it odd, though, this whole bit when he does meet with the woman that, you know, because number 2 says you should find a girl and all this stuff. When he does meet that woman, she's very evasive, which is fine. But then she just suddenly runs off. And he tries to follow her. And it's this weird sequence because he's slowed down by rovers at certain points. And then finally, when she enters the town hall, he's stopped by an electrical field.
I don't get that whole sequence. I'm really glad that you said that, because it's I feel like something went on in the editing room that there was more to this, because it does feel very choppy and kind of, again, pointless. I didn't understand the inclusion of Rover and what Rover was trying to do.
Right.
Because Rover only stops him for a moment and then goes on, and he keeps going on his path. And I think there's 2 attempts by Rover.
Yes.
But he doesn't stop, or it doesn't stop him, and he goes on. And then this is yet another one of those things where I need to know more about it. The town hall zaps him, and then that guy comes out of nowhere, and basically it says, like, "What the hell were you thinking?"
Right,
trying to go in there. Again, it's like I would have turned to that guy and said, "Who the hell are you? You know, get out of my face." You know. Like, he just comes out of nowhere. This character, and I like her too. This is interesting to get 2 younger, attractive female characters in the same episode that are both very intriguing. The maid, and do you remember the number of this woman?
She was 240.
240. She is his keeper.
Yes.
she's assigned to watch him,
which is not something I think we see again of anybody else being that kind of. I think they called her an observer or a controller or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it was an observer. No, you're absolutely right. If that was an idea that they came up with earlier on and then sort of dropped it, because as we've seen, it's usually number 2 who keeps an eye on number 6. Mm-hmm. But we see it's this 240 who's an odd character. She's kind of a cold fish, but number 6 it takes an interest in her. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of a dynamic going on between them,
right,
too.
Now,
but yeah, this whole thing about, and we haven't seen that before, and we haven't seen it. We don't see it after that, as far as I know. With this, like, you can't go into town hall. It will. There's like an electrical field there or something that crackles and zaps.
Well, it begs the question too, and you're going to hate this because he's been to the town hall before, and yet the way they're acting in this episode is he's never been there, or he doesn't know what the town hall is or where it is or anything like that. So
exactly.
I put it to you, this episode actually comes before Free for All.
Yeah, well, even though Free for All is number 2,
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it could,
which would then explain some of the awkwardness of this as well, because to me, it almost works as well in terms of awkwardness as Arrival.
Yeah, it's a lot of it has to do with our modern take on what used to be called a story editor, mm-hmm. and now we call a showrunner.
Right.
And this idea of continuity, and we are all so retentive about that concept that it's hard sometimes for us to look at a show from the 60s,
right,
and roll with those sort of things when it was very common, and probably nobody really questioned things back then. Like, wait, what is that, or that, or this episode kind of contradicts that. I think it didn't. It was just, you just went along and you watched it as episodic television.
Exactly.
Now it has to be one big long story arc over several episodes, and that you watch it religiously and try to put everything, all the boxes, in a row.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. This whole thing with Town Hall.
Well, here's the other thing, too. You point out we've got our maid, we've got 240, who's our observer there, and then we have a female controller in the observation room who is also talking with 240, telling her to be careful about how she conducts herself and such.
Yeah. Well, does that go along with your perception of too many things going on? Is it too many female characters?
No, I mean, that's one thing I will say I did actually appreciate, was that I felt, mm-hmm. Hey, look at this. We've got, of course, it's the only one we get throughout the entire series. Every woman in some way has a position of authority, even the maid, too, as we'll see later on.
Yeah. I think I would have appreciated this even more if this is what the story was about.
Yes.
If it was a story about number 6's perception and interaction with women, and being that number 2 is female in this, that they were trying to explore that or use that and see what they could do with that to get to him. But it's not. It's just more or less happenstance. You would almost have thought that a woman wrote this episode. Of course, that's not true. Obviously, it looks like it's the same guy that wrote A, B, and C. Yeah, it is Anthony Skeen.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you know how much you liked A, B, and C, and I'm coming out of this one going like, not really one to, hold up and as a great example of the show. And then supposedly McGowan, not just didn't like it, but supposedly hated it.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I can't say I hate it too. I mean, I'm like you in that regard, but I keep questioning what was the point. We can, even a bad episode, and we've had a few that we didn't always agree with, we got the point. I'm not a fan of Arrival, but the point of it is it's supposed to world build and set everything up. It does that a little clumsily, but it does do it. In my opinion.
I might have not a totally different opinion, but a different opinion had this been earlier on.
Right.
I think I probably still would have said, I don't really know what the story was here, but it would have been like you say, a lot of world building earlier on. Now it's like world building after the fact.
Right.
Like, we're moving on. If you take these in the order that we're going through them or that they were shown, he's already escaped twice and been all over the place and kind of settled in and we've been told even or shown that now he's still trying to dig into everybody's backgrounds and coming up here he has this whole thing about he's never actually seen a knight before.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. He says he hasn't seen a knight, meaning, he goes to bed when it starts to get dark, and then he wakes up in the morning. He's never actually seen a knight in the village.
He says this to 54?
I can't remember who he says it to. He might even say it to. No, it's not number 2, and of course that's wrong. We've seen him go out at night and traipse around at night, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. But see, this and a couple of other things that just make me really seriously say this has got to be like second or third in terms of episodes, because he gets into it with 54 also. Then afterwards he comes back, she's cleaning, and he gets into it with her, asking her questions about where does the food come from. And then he tests the TV by seeing if he can block them viewing him, and it causes it to crackle and, so he has to pull the pillow away that he's using just in case.
Yeah, that's a funny little bit. But yes, he does actually say that he hasn't actually seen a knight. And so he does. He tries to stay up.
Yes. Yes, he even refuses to drink the cup of tea that the night maid, as I call her, brings him.
Yeah. Right. Wait. Another female character.
Yes.
Yeah. This episode's just filled with them.
Mm-hmm. And then we get this little digression again with something you found more interesting. 40's talking to 2.
What are we to do with him?
There you go again. You mustn't be so eager, Doctor. Your techniques are efficient, but not always beneficial. Number 6 will yet be of great value.
He can't do as he likes.
He's an individual, and they're always trying. Don't worry. His observer will ring me the moment he puts a bomb in your lovely hospital. Incidentally, how's progress with Dutton?
Well, he's given me quite a lot of information, but he's reluctant to go any further. I'm afraid I'll have to be more extreme. Of course, I'll win in the end. I always do.
Rather a small fish, you know. Still, it'll give you an opportunity to experiment. After all, he is expendable.
This thing with 40 is not really going anywhere. No. It might have been a better story on its own. Here's a note that I made at this point. Number 2 goes through a door, right? Mm-hmm. Who is she reporting to? They're in the village, and it's to me very clear that she might even have said something like, "I have to go make my report," or blah 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 blah. And I wrote a note as I was watching this. Who is she reporting to? Why does it seem like she's going to report to number 1? But we've never known or been given any sort of an idea that number 1 is actually in the village.
Right. No, we've never been given any, because everybody reports back to the homeland as we've seen in a couple of episodes.
Now, it's always been they get calls. Of course, he or she could call from wherever she is in the village. I don't know. See, now I'm really confused. Was that the intention, that number one is in the village, or sometimes is in the village? Were we given the impression, I don't know, or supposed to be given the impression that when number 2 goes through that door after she talks to number 40, that she was going off to report to number 1 in person? I feel that that's what we were supposed to think there.
Unless she was going into the beneath the ground there, and she's going to go talk to the giant rover that everybody's sitting around staring at.
Right.
That's number 1.
I made another note here. You know what we're getting a lot of in this episode, which we don't later on, is we get the sense of the administration of the village. Mm-hmm. We get a sense of halls and offices and people in administrative positions and functions. Yeah. Because sometimes in other episodes, it doesn't seem like there's a whole staff of people in an office area in a way. And we're kind of getting that a lot in this episode. Just something that I noted.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if it means anything, but
right. Well, again, it could just be part of this whole busyness of the story to sort of hide the fact that there isn't a plot.
Yeah. I assume that there was a Bible written for this show for the writers. And I've never seen it. I'd like to get an idea of it, and because again, it's an inconsistent idea of the setup of this place, mm-hmm. and I'll admit again, it might be nebulous because it's supposed to be nebulous, or it's supposed to feel different every time. I don't know.
Right. Because you just said, he says he never goes out, so he decides he stays up. And he tries to leave the house, but the front door is locked. He settles into a chair in the living room, and the light above him begins to blink. And we've seen that before, too, in bed, as he's urged to sleep, but he resists it. So then he makes his way to his little balcony, and he climbs down from there and heads towards the beach.
Yeah. What's the point of locking the front door and not locking that door that goes out to the balcony? Right. I think they don't expect that a common prisoner is going to try that.
Right, exactly. But I mean,
right. They should know better with him, even though he's only been there. Coming up, he says something like quite recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's interesting because even number 2 doesn't seem that concerned. She says we could test our efficiency when she finds out that he did leave the house.
Yeah.
We also see that she's got the black cat with her.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Is the cat a spy also?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rover is set loose, and you would think, just like as we've seen in the past, it's just going to scoop him up and bring him back. Oh no! It runs alongside him, toying with him almost.
Yeah. Yeah, there is interesting rover stuff here, of course.
Yeah. It breaks off its pursuit, and then he goes, and they're like, oh, he'll just go back home. But no, instead, he falls asleep on the beach and sleeps there overnight, and nobody gets him, which is another thing I thought was interesting. It's like, you're not going to follow up on that? Or at least give us a line going, well, I didn't see that coming, or just something.
Yeah. Well, no, because then they're like searching for him.
Well, yeah, that's true.
They don't know where he is.
He wakes up the next morning and finds
that... Which doesn't say much for their efficiency, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. It's this weird thing again. It's like either they're like really good about every single move that he makes, or like this, he can disappear for an entire night.
Right.
And they don't know where he is.
Whatever the plot calls for.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
Now things get really weird.
Yes. He finds a body that washes up on shore. He searches through it and finds a wallet, and also the body has a little transistor radio. But when he turns it on, there's only
what this is it's yet another story coming in. And, it's like some of these would have been worthy of their own stories, but it's just this sort of mishmash. And why I say it's weird is because we find out he keeps the body. He keeps the corpse.
Yes,
he puts it in the cave.
He puts it in the cave, which is weird.
Yeah, it is. It's disturbing. We've already seen that number 6 is a man who will do what he has to do, and he will go to extremes. This is a fairly disturbing extreme. This is sort of misuse of a corpse. It's also interesting about the transistor radio, and I don't understand the outcome of that whole thing either.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. I was going to say because when you say outcome, but let's talk about it. We later on get a town crier who we will also see playing a bigger role later on, announcing the carnival that night. And when they cut to the crowd, you can see that the excitement for this is forced. It's almost like it's almost a mindless excitement. Like it's like, well, that's what's expected of us, not genuine. As maybe this is a diversion.
Well, this is our we can flip a switch for everybody in the village, and they just do what we want them to do for the sake of one guy.
Mm-hmm. The prisoner is given his tuxedo, basically to his own tuxedo. Apparently, he recognizes.
Yeah, he even asks, why does he get his own clothes when everybody else gets a costume?
And then this was interesting because, as you say, there's the resolution there. Number 40 and number 2 are watching him as he tries to work the radio. He's trying to see if he can pick up a signal and stuff. And we learn, and again, this could almost be another story in itself. Number 40 is working on Dutton. All right. He cannot understand why he couldn't work on the prisoner. But then we learn that from number 2, Dutton is expendable. The prisoner is not.
Yes. Yep.
The prisoner takes his radio, heads up to a higher point to pick up a signal.
Nowhere is there more beauty than here. Tonight, when the moon rises, the whole world will turn to silver. Do you understand? It is important that you understand. I have a message for you. You must listen. The appointment cannot be fulfilled. Other things must be done tonight. If our torment is to end, if liberty is to be restored, we must grasp the nettle, even though it makes our hands bleed. Only through pain can tomorrow be assured.
All right, my dear. I'm too old for these stairs. Where did you get it? Does it work?
Their practice dictation was at 60 words a minute. Now, here is a passage from the wartime memoirs.
Hardly useful. View is lovely from here. I'm sad, number 6. I thought you were beginning to...
Give in.
Be happy. Everything you want is here.
Everything's elsewhere.
Don't force me to take steps. We indulge any member of our community for a time after that.
Yes, I know. I've been to the hospital. I've seen.
You've seen only a fraction.
I know where you stand, don't I?
She's one of our best observers.
We have one each.
Only our more fractious children. Shall we go down?
Then it says, it's something about, like, that's just for dictation practice or something like that.
That's what he says, or...
That's what it says on the little radio thing.
Oh, I missed that because I was more fascinated with the fact that number 2 arrives with 240, and she basically seems to be very casual about the fact that he's got the radio in the first place, which would seem like an illegal item to have.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Right? There's not much made about that. I don't know if we're supposed to think that was all just a big setup with the corpse and all of that.
Well, I mean, we're going to come back to it eventually. But it's just, I see, you said this seems like there's two stories. This is Arrival all over again.
Yeah. Now it makes me wonder if the writer had a couple different ideas for a story and then just decided to, throw them all together.
Right. I mean, this isn't even there's an A plot, B plot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Right now, I think there's about 3 or 4 different stories going on here.
Yeah.
Or just call them plot points or whatever, because, they're not full stories.
Right. And none, as we're going to see towards the end, have any real satisfying resolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Number 2 moves off. He speaks with number 240. She tries to actually, be a little more reasonable with him. She tries to get him to understand what her position is in all this, but he won't. As he says to her, I won't be a fish in a bowl.
Yeah, I like that line.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, because I was a little thrown by this part. He's then looking at the wallet that he picked up from the body, and he sees the picture and everything.
Yeah.
What was all that about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's supposedly a picture of the dead guy with what, a girl, something like that.
Maybe his wife. Who knows?
I actually read somewhere that photo was taken. It's taken in the village in Port Miran, but I don't think it's supposed to have actually been in the show in the village. But I don't know. I don't know what we were supposed to get from that whole thing, and whether or not we were supposed to think that it was just all one big setup, or was that really just a random corpse that washed up?
See, that's the thing. Was it just a random? Was this all this works with our plan? Let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like. It's weird. It's very weird. And because then it gets it gets even creepier, because basically he later goes to one of the beached boats that people just sort of seem to sit on, or what. It's like the boat's never in the water, these boats that we see them. They're just beached. And he takes a life buoy off of it and heads back to the cave where he's got the body, writes a note, puts it in there in the wallet, and puts it in a baggie, and then puts that on the body, straps the buoy to the body, so this way the body won't sink, it'll float, and he pushes it off towards the sea.
Which is a very haphazard, I don't know, it's a long shot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like that somebody eventually finds that floating body.
Yeah. Well, it also suggests possibly that this could be, and again, I'm stretching a little. This could be early on. This could that they should have done that. He may not know the full extent of the security of the village and such, that he might think, well, a body just floating along, they may not catch it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, because this guy is supposed to be really smart, and it doesn't seem like a smart thing to do.
No,
it's a message in a weird bottle.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like number 6, go and find a bottle.
Yes.
Stop keeping corpses laying around in caves. and flopping them all around, and doing weird things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's very macabre.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah. No, definitely. Number 240 finds that she's lost the prisoner, so she reports to number 2. And what's interesting is we get, and again, like you say, there's these scenes that just go nowhere, and we don't know what the motivations are. Number 2 is upset that 240 has lost, and we get this weird thing where she's like, oh, well, see, now this may be where we got number 30, because she says, I'm going to switch to start watching 34. And 22 says, don't bother, he's dead, in a really sarcastic way. And I'm wondering if that dead body was supposed to be 34.
Yeah, see, that crossed my mind. I don't know. Maybe we're being very dense, and if we ever got anything from our listeners, I'm expecting somebody to say to us, "Oh my God, you guys, how stupid can you get? Of course, it's that guy."
So, like I said, he sends him adrift. And what's interesting is he turns around, who is there in the cave but Dutton, who is now known as number 42, although he'll continue to refer to him as Dutton throughout the story. And at first when I saw him, I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to kill him because, he can't afford to have somebody. But once he recognizes him, and what's interesting is Dutton knows that his time is up. He was actually, and this is interesting, this explains something, because we've asked about this before. Why was the prisoner let free at certain occasions when they should have held on to him while they were conducting whatever experiment or plan they were doing? Because it just seemed, here, he says, they gave me 72 hours to consider giving up my information. But since I really have none, because I was never really trusted, I know my time is up.
Yeah. This is the point where there's the exchange about Six says, how long have you been here? Mm-hmm. And Dutton says something like a couple of months. And then he says, and you. And that's when number 6 says, quite recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say, I know we've been saying that number 2 doesn't, this female version doesn't bring much to the table in terms of anything original compared to what we've seen so far. But I did like the next scene with the two of them where they have their verbal sparring with the word game.
You're waiting for someone, Mr. Tuxedo? Or expecting someone?
Mr. Peter Pan?
So it seems.
With his shadow?
You're being hostile again. What were you looking at?
A light?
A star.
A boat?
An insect.
A plane?
A flying fish.
Somebody who belongs to my world.
This is your world. I am your world. If you insist on living a dream, you may be taken for mad.
I like my dream.
Then you are mad. Now go on up to the town hall.
May I?
You may enter tonight. It's carnival.
Yeah, yes. Yes, that is, it's even kind of creepy, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that she calls him Mr. Tuxedo, and he calls her Mr. Peter Pan.
Yes. And now the carnival has arrived, at the town hall. It's funny. He says to number 2 or 240, I forget which one, but he says, I rarely drink. And yet he's able to identify the champagne by year.
Yeah. Well, he's being sarcastic, I guess, or just showing off.
Right, exactly.
In a way. Yeah. Here's the other thing. The whole carnival is yet another element thrown into this episode. Mm-hmm. For really kind of no reason, or we almost start a whole nother story here.
Yeah. And it's interesting because here he is again, just like he's been doing, pressing the maid, pressing number 2. He meets with 240. She's dressed as Little Bo Peep, which is really symbolic there because she lost her sheep, number 34, and our own prisoner here. So
right.
He dances with her, and as he does, he tries again to press her for information.
How many of these have you been to? This is my first and last.
Don't be silly.
Yes. Who's saying that? You or the computer?
Me. Let's stop the dance.
Don't behave like a human being. It might just confuse people.
Only you are confused. They're not for long. There are treatments for people like you.
Like you. I've told Science. She must get instructions. Who do they come from? Is he here tonight? The man behind the big door?
Well, there's no need to know. This place has been going for a long time.
Since the war? Before the war? Which war?
A long time.
See, that's why I just, the more I see this, I'm like, this is early. This is first 3 episodes.
Yeah,
that's
it. I agree. It's interesting here because they're talking about number 2 and getting instructions, and he actually asks her, "Is he here tonight, the man behind the big door?" Mm-hmm. And number 6 does one of his usual questioning things. Since the war? Before the war? Which war? Yeah. About how long the village has been there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And he does something that I would imagine he might not do as readily in later episodes because it might not be as prudent or it might not be as important. But he's there and he gets an opportunity to slip away because he finds a lab coat, puts on some glasses, and he sneaks about the rooms of the town hall there. Mm-hmm. And that's when he meets up with this other technician who's also in the lab coat, and he's handed a termination order. And when he opens it up, he finds out it's for Dutton.
Yeah, it's for Dutton. This is, again, what I meant when I'm saying we get this idea of there are offices and there's a staff.
Right.
And administrative staff kind of running around through this place.
Mm-hmm. As he's walking around, he also finds, I guess, what is a small morgue within City Hall there, because he discovers that they have found the dead body that he set out to see.
Yeah. Oh, well, right?
Yep.
After all that, and I mean, I don't know. He had to have known that was going to happen, probably.
I guess, And then, of course, number 2 walks in with the cat.
You make the most of your opportunities. You don't blame us for doing the same. She's taken to you. I'm jealous. Oh, she's mine. She works here, too. She's very efficient. Almost ruthless.
Never trust a woman, even the 4-legged variety.
You can trust everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out the cat is definitely number 2's, which then leads to another, misogynist line of his: never trust a woman, even the 4-legged variety.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Fun line. Wouldn't get away with that today, but fun line.
Yep.
Let's go back. The cabaret is beginning.
In his pocket.
The wallet?
Yes.
It's still there. Amended slightly. We'll amend him slightly. It's you who's died in an accident at sea. May I?
So to the outside world.
Which you only dream about.
I'll be dead.
A small confirmation of a known fact. Don't blame me. It's a question of waste not, want not.
And this is interesting. And again, placing it early on. She goes, the world outside, and that sort of ties in with what she said, I am your world, earlier. The world outside thinks you're dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That they did something to make it look like he's dead,
right,
rather than just disappeared?
Which is interesting because then later when he does have the opportunity, be it through the fake version or when he actually does get back, in Many Happy Returns, nobody says, I thought you were dead.
No, they said, what happened? You disappeared.
You disappeared. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They return back to the party where now, the party atmosphere has stopped. He's actually placed on trial for having the radio. Yeah.
And then, right. Okay. So here we go. Well, I don't know. It's a whole new element. I got to tell you, I kind of started drifting in and out at this point of the episode. I don't know if I was just tired or what. I don't know. It just wasn't saying anything, new to me. And like I've been saying all along, it wasn't going anywhere.
You know what it is? A lot of people say they have a problem watching The Prisoner because there are so many trippy elements. And admittedly so. But the trippy elements most times make some, like you can read into it and you can say, okay, I can understand why this is, or you can interpret it. This episode tries to be trippy for trippy's sake. It's like, well, we're trippy. Let's be trippy. So we get this weird whole court thing going on. That suddenly, where before it was never an issue that he had the radio, as we saw, now suddenly he's on trial for his life.
Yeah, there's a word for what you're saying. It's pretension. It's just kind of pretentious,
right. Right.
And I agree. I'm one who will hold up the show and say, watch it because it's weird, because it's kind of trippy, or or sometimes even dreamlike. But it just wasn't falling into place for me with this one.
Yep. The way it's all set up, number 240 is the prosecutor. Number 2 is his defender. The judges are the maid. Number 40, the doctor, and the town crier.
So what is the point of the trial?
I don't know, because as we can clearly see from it, after both sides are presented, it's a kangaroo court. I mean, it's all just done for the act.
Right.
They're going to find him guilty.
That's why I call it pretentious.
Yeah.
Why go through all of that? They can do whatever they want to do with him in the village. Like, this was weird just for weird's sake.
Right.
And it wasn't even that weird.
And the thing is that's so weird about it is it gets even weirder, because then he says, I want to call a character witness. Like, he plays into it. You think, okay, he's saying this because he's going to do something brilliant. And of course, then they bring out Dutton, and probably he was thinking, maybe if I bring him out, I can buy him some more time. But when they say his termination, they don't mean they kill him. They have turned him, like, they've lobotomized him. He's a simpleton.
Yeah.
Yep. And dressed as a jester for the party.
Right.
So, and again, this is where it just keeps getting weirder and weirder. He's found guilty. He's sentenced to death. He decides to make a run for it. He just bolts out of the room, and the party chases after him.
That's just another part that I just didn't care for. That all the people at the party just go crazy and start running after him.
Right.
They're all controlled again, because otherwise, why would they care?
Yeah. He makes his way back to the morgue area, and for some reason, this time he's able to find a trap door that he escapes from them with, which leads... Yeah,
that came out of nowhere.
Everything comes out of nowhere, though, in some respects.
There's, again, it's almost as if there's an earlier scene that's missing, because he goes right to it. It's almost as if when he was in that room before, there should have been a little shot of him looking down and noticing the trap door,
right,
or something. Because if that's not Deus ex machina, I don't know what it is.
He goes through the trap door, down these stairs, finds this room that's got a teletype machine. And again, I'm assuming it's sending messages back and forth. Maybe some people suggest it's communicating with number 1. So he tries to wreck it, but it continues to work despite his best efforts in pulling out the innards and everything. Yeah,
I kind of gave up by this point and just was just like, okay, let's just get to the end of this thing.
And that's it. It's kind of like, it's almost like we did all this. It's so trippy. Now what? Okay, we got to tie up a few loose ends. Well, guess what? No, 240 is no longer your observer because she was getting involved. She had feelings for the prisoner in some way.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that. There was that, and then here's the biggest bit of letdown of the whole thing, because he's been sentenced to death, and number 2 walks in and everything, and we don't get a thing of don't worry about it. The death sentence is. It's basically, she kind of says, this is your life, deal with it, buddy. But not in those words,
Right.
And it's just so, and then bang, gates, prison cell. Closing credits. Wait a minute. Is he going to be killed? What? It doesn't matter. It's over.
No. And at that, you know what? In every other episode, when we get that boom, and it's over, and the bars come across in his face and the whole thing.
Right.
There's always an impact there, and you go, wait, what? You don't get it here.
No.
This just occurred to me. Do you know what this episode is? It's the prisoner equivalent to the alternative factor in Star Trek.
See, I'm going to argue that the alternative factor makes more sense than this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, come on, folks out there. If we don't get cards and letters about this little debate here, then I don't know about you all.
Because I am one of those people who actually likes it. I won't say love it. I won't put it up there as I like the alternative factor.
You're kidding? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, alternative factor is a prime example of like picking up random pieces of film off the editing room floor and editing them together, it's like what the Beatles used to do, where they take a bunch of music on a tape, cut it up into pieces and throw it up in the air and then edit it back together, and that's what they put on the record, except they're the Beatles and they could get away with that. Alternative fact, that's like they set out to do something and then something just fell apart.
That's this.
At some point they go, oh hell, just air the damn thing.
That's Dance of the Dead.
Yeah. And why is it called Dance of the Dead? That's another thing.
I don't know.
There's a little bit about dancing. When he first gets to the carnival, there's a little back and forth thing about dancing. I mean, I guess we're supposed to look at everything. The back and forth between him and number 2 is a dance, but and
he's the dead man,
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, Dutton is already dead. Mm-hmm. Really, when we see him. And then there's the corpse, and then, I guess you could say that number 6, is, but it doesn't work very well. There's some interesting bits that, I guess would contribute to the mythology of the village. But overall, even if, like I said, if it was shown in the order that it was shot, I still don't think it would have elevated it very much at all.
I got to admit, just in talking to you these last 10 minutes, I suddenly came up with a new idea for a podcast.
Oh no! Yeah, just what you need.
I know it's never going to happen. But it just hit me. It would be called "Fight Me" podcast, and my first episode would be, "Hey, the alternative factor isn't as bad as everybody makes it out to be. Fight me."
You know what? I love this idea. I love this plan. Every episode you would take something that fans really debate over,
right?
And from all different sorts of things. You could even have solicit ideas,
right? Right.
And I love it. And Mount, you know what? Maybe you would finally get responses.
When we get them, it's still the kind of stuff like great episode, and then of course I go podcast. Or the episode we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
I sent you that thing the other day about that sent me through the roof.
Yeah. At least it was a response,
right? Well, it's an old adage. You've probably heard this too in the restaurant industry. Is that 10 people will tell you you've done something wrong, but maybe only one person will tell you you've done something right.
Well, I fully expected that we would get raked over the coals because of our ignorance about this show. Because I know, well, like many shows, but especially this one, that there are die-hard fans of this show that know every in and out. It's the people who call our star Pat, because they feel so chummy with him and on a personal level with the star that they can call him Pat. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's why I said in the beginning where we really need to say, hey folks, we're just having some fun here. This is not minutia or anything. We're sitting there just talking about the episode, because I thought we would get a lot of you guys are idiots. You don't know anything about the show. But no. I'm just going to start saying the craziest damn things about this show.
You need to drink again, Jim. That was our success with the Green Hornet.
Yeah, that's what I need to do. It's a drinking game. Every time somebody says "be seeing you," you take a shot.
There you go. I mean, but
Okay.
it's just there it is. That's it, folks. I mean, I can't say anything more about it. Let's put it this way. If this were being, if you wanted to get like our reviews and put like captions, like they do with movies and things like that.
Yeah.
It's an episode, John S. Drew.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, wow, this is 2 in a row for me that I've had problems with.
Right.
It's a one-way mirror. They can't see you. They've never seen in here, and they never will. They lack your initiative. Deal with them.
Why are they trying to kill me?
They don't know you're already dead. Locked up in the long box in that little room. She's no longer your observer. Observers of life should never get involved.
You'll never win.
Then how very uncomfortable for you, old chap.
So I'm hoping that the next one is going to be something good.
The next one.
And what is the next one?
The next one now, if we're going the British route, certainly has a lot of symbolism in it, and considering the theme of the show, we're going to be doing Checkmate.
Okay.
So
wow, the third episode filmed.
So should it be considered also an early contender, or can you place it later down the line?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I seem to remember that I liked Checkmate.
Right.
And it's going to be a really good Port Miron episode.
Right, exactly.
A lot of outdoor shooting.
And my understanding is that still exists, that giant chessboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes, exactly.
Someday, maybe. Mm-hmm. Someday, maybe.
Yeah, someday. So, folks, as Jim says, let us know what you're thinking about this, whether you're commenting on the Chronic Rift page when we post these over at chronicrift.com, writing to us at thechronicrift@gmail.com. We also place, and we want to give, a word of thanks to those of you that are listening through the Prisoner Facebook group that Jim and I are both also a part of. But, let us know. Don't just, again,
Fight us, fanboy.
Fight us, fanboy. Give us something to think about too. I mean, when you hear, as we say, we're talking about the British episodes, in the order that they were done. So what comes after Checkmate, and comes after this, and so on. Maybe you've got thoughts also about upcoming things that maybe you want to send us to think about as we watch those episodes.
There you go.
But until then, folks, that's going to do it. And this is your number 2 saying, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
I remember from an episode of McGowan's old Secret Agent series that seems fitting here. When his character John Drake is warned to be careful of that woman, he replies, "That's one of my rules." Perhaps in the village, even his own rules are rules to which he is not subject. As we've just seen, Dance of the Dead is full of bizarre imagery, ambiguous symbology, and disturbing ideas. Beneath this seemingly meaningless, sinister fantasy on the surface, there are some significant points to be made, however. Take the costumes, for instance. The prisoner's alleged peers sit in judgment, dressed as Marie Antoinette, Caesar, and Napoleon, powerful tyrants all. But the real power in the village lies with number 2, who is dressed as an innocent, childlike fantasy figure. Immediately, we can sense that appearances in the village can be quite deceiving. Perhaps number 2, as Peter Pan, is meant to illustrate to the prisoner, and to us, that the common view of maturity is to give up our fantasies. Peter Pan can't accept growing up. The prisoner can't accept remaining in the world of supposed grown-ups, the humorless, somber world of the village, where maturity is equated with conformity. At least in that respect, the village is the world. But what are we to make of the prisoner in his own tuxedo? Peter Pan says he has no costume because he doesn't exist. Strange talk coming from a fictional fantasy character. But perhaps our hero's own analysis is the more accurate one. He wears his own tuxedo because he is still himself. And yet in this crowd, he's entirely out of place, costume or not. But even in this heavy symbology of costume, the writer of this episode shows signs of lightness. The dictatorial doctor dressed as Napoleon, for instance, and the observer dressed as Little Bo Peep, who's lost one of her sheep, because he is no sheep. This sort of humorous yet revealing irony is one of the hallmarks of this one-of-a-kind TV series. The prisoner dances with death in many forms in this episode. The death of his hopes, the death of his dreams, and the death of his friend Dutton, the fool who thought he could gain his freedom by giving the village what they wanted. But the real death the prisoner suffers here may very well be the death of the outside world, the life he led before his arrival in the village. We certainly get many indications that this is the case. An unknown stranger, a person from outside the village, is washed up on shore, and the prisoner's message to that outside world using the man is taken away from him and silenced. His friend Dutton, from his outside life, is taken away from him and silenced. And the radio, broadcasting his own despair, is taken away from him and silenced. His links with his old life are systematically being discovered and eliminated by number 2 in an attempt to isolate him from an old reality and replace it with a sinister new reality, the perverted fantasy of the village. Dance of the Dead has usually aired as the 8th episode of The Prisoner, a positioning that now seems ridiculous. It was originally intended to be broadcast as the 2nd episode, and we can see how fitting it is in that position. In it, for instance, our hero asks a multitude of questions about the village, even though he's warned that answers are a prison for oneself. In it, he states that he's new in the village, and he claims he's never seen a night here. And he's certainly still in shock from his abrupt displacement from his old world, with which he desperately seeks some sort of contact. Also, if we take Arrival and Dance of the Dead as a pair, we do get a new perspective on the nature of the series and the village. In Arrival, we're shown the international character of the village. In Dance of the Dead, we see that it crosses boundaries of time as well as geography. Has this place been here since the war, the prisoner asks? Before the war? Which war? The costumes, too, indicate the trans-temporal nature of the place. If we're led to believe that this is indeed a global village, are we now supposed to realize that it's a summation of history as well? If it is, then the prisoner must be the focal point, the individual in any time and place, fighting for his life against society, and every man, which, incidentally, was the name of McGowan's production company. Well, this is all pretty heavy stuff. Maybe we can lighten it up a bit with a couple pieces of trivia. Although this episode seems to have a lot to do with women, Mary Morris was a last-minute replacement as number 2. The role was originally written for famed British actor Trevor Howard. And how about this one? When writer Anthony Skeen scripted Dance of the Dead, he was led to believe that he was actually revealing the identity of number 1 when he showed us the telex machine that refused to die. Silly wabbit. Next week, our experiment in reordering episodes continues as we present Checkmate, formerly episode number 11. But just watch how well it fits up front. And if you need any clues about why, I'm Scott Appel, and I'll be seeing you.